Word First Radio.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to Word First Radio, the podcast brought to you by Word First Ministries. I am your host, Jacob O'Neill, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Cameron.
Hey.
And more of the Word First crew, Marissa and Allen.
Hi.
Hey.
What's up, guys?
What's up?
Nothing much.
The applause.
That's
the
right.
applause sound effect.
Love the applause kid. And we've talked about that for several episodes. We just got to go ahead and do it. Guys, where are we right now?
I don't know.
Okay.
I actually don't know. I couldn't tell you. It's beautiful and it's cold.
Yeah.
But we are somewhere in between Oslo and Hoth.
Yeah, where they film Star Wars.
We are
Yes.
Roke. We're in Roke.
I believe that's true.
I don't know what that really
They just
means.
told us
I
what
don't know what
stop
that
this
is.
was too. We're on the train.
We're
We
on the
just passed
train.
Nesbien.
Okay.
Don't know if that tells you anything.
We're on, so as we scramble to find on our phones where we are in the world, we're actually on the train that connects Bergen to Oslo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a thing we've been dreaming about for a couple years to do, take this train in the daytime. But we're coming home on the train from Bergen, and Skeptics Week in Bergen more specifically.
Yeah.
So if you hear some noise in the background, listeners, like someone laughing in the cabin next to us or some loud noises in the hallway, please bear with us because we're doing this live on the train.
Yeah. We have, yeah. Oh, there's some. I don't know if we'll be able to.
We'll see if it gets picked up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, so we're coming home from Bergen, from Skeptics Week in Bergen, which was pretty awesome.
It was great.
Why, Cam, how about you just help us get started real quick? Why did we spent a whole week in Bergen?
Yeah.
Why did we do that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so we've mentioned on the podcast before, and we've mentioned, while we were getting ready to come to Norway and what this event, that going to Skeptics Week in Bergen, what that was and what it meant. So we work, from time to time, we work with and are invited to participate with Laga, a Norwegian Christian student ministry. And this is one of those events, and this one is especially dear to our hearts because it was during short-term trips here that God really sort of changed the course of our lives. And so we have a very tender spot in our heart for this exact event. And Skeptics Week is, overall, it's the same idea that they do in Bergen as we've done in Oslo. But it's a Christian student union, and what they do is sort of make space for a week to evangelize and talk about big questions. And there are events in the evening that are generally apologetic in nature. But I think that as I talked with people this week, it's less common than you would think for Norwegians to investigate these things together or even take seriously that Christianity might be true. And so I think the best way I've heard Skeptics Week explained is like this. It's an opportunity to make some space where you don't feel like you're having religion sort of force-fed to you, but we can maybe seriously and in a meaningful way discuss whether the central claims of Christianity are true. So something like that. We've been here all week, so it's a 6 to 7 hour, depending on which way you're going, train ride to Bergen.
Yep.
And we've been there for a week, and now we are a few hours from home.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thanks for that, Cam.
Yeah.
So I think if you dig into the history of Word First Radio, you can kind of find me and Cameron's perspectives of what something like Bergen means to us and how visiting Norway has kind of changed our lives. But I want to go ahead and hand the mic over to Allen in Motown. Allen, how about we go ahead and start with you? When was your first time in Bergen, actually?
It was going to be the
2019.
yeah.
Was it? Or was it
February.
2020?
Oh, 2020. Sorry, that was mine.
2019 was
bad,
Motown's
my bad.
first time.
Yeah. We've been telling people 2018 all week, but that's okay.
And that's not 2019
It's been a long
either.
So yeah,
Okay, you were here in 2020.
2020 for the second time that the team got invited to be here for Skeptics Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. And what was that trip like for you coming out here? That was your first time. Was that like your first missions trip like ever?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. What was that like?
It was very interesting. I mean, I'd never left the States before that, so it was an awesome opportunity to be able to explore and travel a little bit, but then as well as see new things and meet new people And yeah, so definitely something out of my comfort zone, not something that I normally would do on my everyday basis. But yeah,
Yeah.
I remember being a California boy stepping out of that airport in Norway in February for the first time.
I think I remember there was like a Wednesday this week or whatever day was like super rainy, and I was like, yeah, that's the Bergen the Bergen I remember. Yeah, really cool. Has it gotten a little easier? So, you talked about the first time you're here out of your comfort zone. Has it gotten any easier at all? It's totally okay if it hasn't, because I know this stuff is taxing.
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, it's probably about the same.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Really, really cool. Awesome. Well, we'll get into that and get into your experience actually being out in the stand and talking to students. Motown, how about you share with us what the first time you were in Bergen, as we just clarified, was in 2019. What was that like for you?
Life-changing, I guess, to say the least.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's where I first felt my call from God to come to Norway. And if you're a donor, you probably have heard me say this story 1,000 times, where I just walked out of the airport and I was overwhelmed, and I knew, and I mean, I was full on crying in public, so that's cute.
It's very cute.
And being back has really solidified that feeling again, and it's I don't know, recharged that feeling. I feel, I mean, it's been a long week, but I do feel in a strange way recharged.
Alan and I were talking about that last night, and we've talked about that in general, that like, what does burnout mean? And people associate burnout with being tired. And we're like, no, we're tired. Like, it was an exhausting week, but that's not a complaint at all. Like, it was exhausting, but it was all energizing and exciting, and people like being burned out and not wanting to do stuff and feeling discouraged and like you just need a break. Isn't primarily a matter of exhaustion or energy. It's a matter of feeling encouraged and valuable and significant. And I think that's, as Alan and I had a little bros dinner last night. I couldn't take Whitney out for Valentine's Day.
So for Valentine's Day, they had a date.
Little Valentine's Day.
Little
between me and
some
Cam.
dude. And we had talked about that, about how you were definitely like whipped, and it's long days and a long week, but how exciting and how significant that feels. Like if you are pouring yourself into something that matters and you're using your gifts and you feel like you mattered, like what you did mattered and was appreciated, then that just puts all the wind in your sails.
Yeah, feels nice.
Yeah.
The first 2 years that we did this, I felt like the American foreigner, I guess.
Sure.
But since spending the last few years integrating into Norwegian society this year, I've felt really at home amongst the Christians in Bergen, especially. I'm quite introverted and shy, and I did not feel that this week, which is so weird. That's Jesus.
Of course. That's super cool to hear. Speaking of how, like, especially being here the first time, it felt like, hey, fish out of water. It's a new experience in a new culture for the very first time. I want maybe some of us to talk about some of our language wins this week, because being in Bergen, speaking Norwegian is a whole other animal than it is learning and speaking Norwegian in Oslo. Why is that? It's what we've talked about a little bit on the show before. It's because of the dialects. And so how would you describe Bergen dialect? I guess
I don't think I'm even going to.
Okay, cool. It's very different. And so speaking Norwegian here is it's a whole other challenge.
Yeah, in the West, it's okay. So maybe I'll try. But we live in Oslo, which is in the east, and the maybe like major dividing line between dialects. That's hard to say because there are so many, but there's kind of an east-west divide. It's more of a gradient, but that's kind of, there's Westland and kind of Eastland dialect. And then in the south, they speak with a different accent. And we in Bergen are kind of the northernmost part of the southern accent. So it's a sort of a southern accent where they don't say their R like you would in Spanish, where you have a rolled sound. They say the R in the back of their throat like a French person, and it's kind of a ra sound.
Right.
And so It's so for us, we have, as far as being from Oslo, I'm sorry, people speaking Norwegian, it's like we're the farthest quadrant away
Right.
in terms of vocabulary and accent as the people in Bergen.
Yeah.
But Bergen is the second biggest city in Norway, so it's also maybe the second most. Maybe I don't know, but it's a dominant dialect. It's something that most people hear. So most people in Oslo and most people in Bergen, they're getting along just fine. But as people who have lived and learned Norwegian in Oslo, it's exhausting. Goodness gracious! They're using different words, saying them different ways, and it's hard to track. And then there were other dialects from other people there. So like so the word for week is uke. So we would say if we were from Oslo that this was skepsis uke.
Yeah.
But in Bergen they say uken. That's
Yeah.
not too hard. Skepsis uken. We can get that. That's just a matter. That's like a gender change.
Sure.
We can understand that. But there are people calling it skepsisveka.
Yeah.
And we're like,
What?
so you
There you go.
yeah. So and that
It could be skepsisuka, skepsisuken, or skepsisveka.
Veka, yeah.
And it all means the same thing.
yeah. In
It means
America, you can get
skepsisuka.
there. You're if I say,
Yeah.
look, we say uka and they say veka. You're like, yeah, those sound pretty, but I mean, I don't know. Imagine if somebody was talking about a week in English instead of week, they said a voke.
Yeah.
Or or
Volk, yeah. That's good.
Everything except the K is different in that word. So
Right.
oh, good announcement on the train.
And,
that's
and
not
the
important
Bergen
for us.
dialect as well. If you guys wanted to pick
looks like
this
we're gonna stop
audio
again.
apart.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
I've talked way too much, but that's
No, you're fine.
It's a lot of but you said language wins.
Yeah,
I think
in spite of the different dialects, what were actually some nice language? I don't know, things that felt like successes or wins. I've got a few myself, but I mean, I'm curious if you guys think you have some.
Why don't
Well,
you? Yeah.
I'll say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I consider myself probably the slowest on the team when it comes to the language learning. I feel a bit behind from everybody else. But this week I felt encouraged because it was I was able to hold conversations in Norsk, and I feel like it also just legitimized people wanting to talk to me.
Yeah,
So that felt good, and I realized I also know more than I thought I do.
Yeah.
sure.
I was able, yeah, which is really encouraging, even though it was still hard.
Right.
But I wasn't able to do that in the previous years, so that was cool.
Yeah,
I had I have a few myself as well. One of the main ones is to be was able to point out different words in different dialects where so
That's a huge one, yeah.
I mentioned, or how Cam was mentioning, people say different words, and I was able to understand someone and hear them say "ka"
Yeah, instead of
Oh, yeah,
So I heard that and it was pretty awesome. I was like, yeah, that's cool.
yeah. That's the Norwegian word for what. It changes across dialects. You
Yeah.
could say "va" from Oslo or "ka" from like the north or from Bergen. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. But yeah,
And then another one is actually I had with two students when we were at one of the faculties that we went to this week. She was speaking Norwegian to me and I was replying in English, and they didn't even question it. They just kept going, and then I replied in English, and then they kept speaking Norwegian to me.
that's super
And I was
cool.
actually really comforted by that. And then she asked me where I was from and why I was replying in English. And then I told her, gave her a small explanation, and started just speaking Norwegian to her as well. And they understood everything that I was saying when I was talking to them, which is really cool. And then my last one I would say is that everyone that I started speaking Norwegian to this week didn't automatically switch to English.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
Praise
And
God.
was able to continue a conversation with me. I mean, it was mostly at the coffee shop, but that, for the most part, I felt really good about.
Yeah.
That's the worst one. If only they would just automatically switch to English sometimes. Because some people, what they do is they clarify. They're like, okay, Norwegian or English or something like that. And they stop it. That always makes me feel a little worse. I wish they would.
Really?
Especially-
I
For me,
feel
it
worse when
does.
they just switch. When
Do
I
you?
when I
Okay.
walk up and I speak Norwegian and they just reply in English, like you shouldn't
yeah.
be doing this.
Sure.
Yeah. But both, and then often we get, before they even start speaking to us at all,
Yeah.
they'd be like English or Norwegian.
Yeah.
Sure.
Either because of the way that we look or the way that they heard us talk to someone else.
Right.
So that's pretty nice as well.
Yeah, very cool. I think for me, kind of one of my language successes this week is being able to kind of ignore or not rely on the translation for the evening events so much. So I think Cameron just mentioned a second ago that Skeptics Week has all these evening events. We'll talk about those in a minute. But they usually are in Norwegian. And so kind of just listening to those and not having to rely on the translation, but just kind of focusing on the speakers, speeches and what they're trying to say. I think my best one for me was there was a conversation between a Christian and a Muslim that was all in Norwegian.
Yeah.
And I was sitting next to Cam, and about 20, 30 minutes in, I told Cam, I was like, dude, I understand basically everything they're saying. And enough so that I asked a question in the Q&A, like I felt like a part of the dialogue. And so that was pretty cool. I can't remember the last time.
Yeah, that was a talk. I really wanted to make
that.
sure to get all of it. So I wanted to hear, I thought I'd listen to the translation of that one because I didn't want to miss it. And there's some technical hurdles with the translation. And we eventually got it working, but it turned out that I had better success listening and understanding in Norwegian than listening to and understanding the Norwegian and then the translation. The translation was great, but it felt pretty good to be able to, I understood it better directly listening and understanding than listening to someone's translation of what was happening.
Right. That was my experience too, which surprised me.
Yeah.
It was really cool. Awesome. Thank you guys for getting into those and sharing those. Now, what were the kinds of things we did this week? So we have been involved not just in the regular day-to-day evangelism, although we'll talk about that and kind of what the day-to-day kind of looked like doing Skeptics Week. But what were some of the kinds of things we did? So we did evangelism, and what did that kind of look like? What did we do at the different faculties we went to?
Oh yeah, I guess I'll start. So this week we were at 2 faculties. 3 days we were at the
law school.
Law school, yeah. So they pretty much just gave us the hand
They told me our first morning, you're the table leader, go.
Yeah,
All right.
gave us the football and to be able to run with it. So we were pretty much making waffles all week for most of the week.
We did the math. What was it?
We made over 450 waffles within those 3 days. If we were to do another day, it would have been over 600.
Boy, I'm sick of it.
And
Sick of waffles.
That's just one of the faculties. There was multiple students across other faculties, but this was just for us.
Yeah, so
around 450.
The University of Bergen is the various schools or departments, they call them faculties, are spread around the city a bit. And so so they send a group at a time to the different buildings. And so like Alan said, we were out for 4 days doing campus evangelism. The first day we were at the first 3 days we were in the law school.
Law school.
Yeah.
Law faculty making waffles.
Moten and I were the ones that manned the waffle stand pretty much the entire time, which was really nice. I mean, didn't necessarily lead to deeper conversations, but we were able to have conversations with other people and explore, just see different faces, different nationalities, different things, and tell them why we're here and what we're doing, and even explain a little bit of our story.
Yeah.
And then the last faculty that we went to was the...
Was it HVL? I don't remember what that stands for.
I think they do pedagogy.
Was it pedagogy?
Pedagogis?
It was a lot of things.
I only know it in Norwegian. I don't,
Yeah, but either way, we were there just serving coffee because they did not allow us to make waffles there.
Right.
And just doing the same thing. So being able to talk to people and... Yeah,
so we'd make waffles. I say I didn't make many waffles. I don't know that I made any waffles. Moten and Allen pretty well handled that. So what we do is sort of promote the evening events. So we have different talks and lectures and things in the evenings that is like there's an open invitation for people to come and check out.
Right.
And then we also have a team of people out doing evangelism, and we do that. We break the ice with surveys about big questions.
Yeah.
Super cool. And then in the evening, I want to go ahead just to give a shout out because I don't know what they want to. Alan and Cameron are the super MVPs for the evening events. because they actually took care of all of the Motown. You can help me out, prop them up, but they took care of all of the audio and video and most if not all of the tech stuff that they had, like for the evening events. You guys took care of for them, just volunteered, which was awesome. I mean,
well, that's very nice of you to say nice things. We didn't take care of all of their tech, so they had
Sure.
whatever happened in the room. They had handled. They did a really good job. But we brought some video and audio recording equipment so that they can produce audio and video of the evening events, which was just something we did kind of on a whim when we came in 2019 and 2020.
Right.
But in 2021, it was Corona time, and so they couldn't have their ordinary Skeptics Week, and they were able to use footage that we had provided them with to do some virtual Skeptics Week stuff. So we see the value in that. And this year, they didn't ask us to bring anything, but we showed up with stuff, and they really took advantage of it. They seem to be really excited, and they're ready to roll and put stuff on YouTube, and we want to get this out here. It'd be really great to be able to publish this stuff. So yeah, Alan and I, we carried equipment on our backs and in our hands, and
I was thinking about this morning walking to the train that just myself probably have 300 pounds of equipment with me. So there, I don't know how wonderful any of the footage that we got will be, but we'll see, and we'll give that to them so they can have the opportunity to do what they will with it.
I'm eager to see what that is, because we left them with a hard drive full of stuff. And
almost 1,000 gigabytes worth of stuff.
Super. I'm just super cool that you guys did that for them, because I can't, and I'm just glad that you guys could be there to get it done for them. And so definitely huge shout out to you guys. Super cool. And so how about we get into like some of the conversations we got to have and some of the things we talked to people about. So we have these therefore prompt. Actually, before we do that, let's get into what these evening events were all about, actually. So we'll back up another step in the conversation. What are these evening events all about? What topics do we have this week? Who wants to talk about one?
Why did you go for it?
I should go for it? Yeah, so we had the first... I totally forgot what the first topic was.
Yeah,
I remember now. The first topic was... it was a conversation/debate kind of thing between two Christians and two humanist atheists. That was all in Norwegian. And it was for Norwegians, right? So it was very different dialects across the board. So I could understand maybe 2/4 of them most of the time. But that kind of conversation happened. Cam, you had a lot of thoughts about that one, at least from what I remember back in Bergen. How was that event?
The event was really good. So Karl-Johan Schøde, the General Secretary of Laga, he gave a presentation about moral duties. So the event was called Bud uten Gud. And Bud is like commands or commandments.
Right.
There's like so the point was, do moral duties exist if there's no such thing as God? And I think he gave an admirable presentation on that topic.
Sure.
It was a half hour, 40 minutes or something. We'll see if it comes out on YouTube. That was really good. And then after that, it was a panel discussion. So he was joined by a woman called Sophia, and then two secular humanists, and a guy called Christian, a guy called Dietrich.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Is
sure.
that right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
And I don't have that much to say about it, except that Dietrich was really affable and friendly and genial, and he seemed to be thoughtful and respectful, and I don't agree with him, and I think he's dead wrong when it comes to the possibility of having moral duties if God's not real. But I really appreciated him. I appreciated what he had to say. The other guy, Christian, I just didn't. I don't know. I want to find a kind way of criticizing, because I don't want to criticize him, but I wasn't taken in either by his way of presenting or any of the things he had to say. It was kind of it sounded like the new atheism, which it seems to me has been falling out of fashion, and for good reason. And it was just kind of the same new atheist lines that don't seem to take seriously the weight of the problem or understand the breadth of the problem, and the response to it just is so lacking and so, I don't know, uninteresting and unsatisfying.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could have many episodes about moral virtue and apologetics and all of that, but without saying too much.
Right.
And then Sophia, she was great. I have never met her before,
Yeah, same.
and the extent of my interaction with her was just putting a mic on her and then taking a mic off of her.
Yeah.
She was very gracious when some stranger walked up and started like grabbing at her torso to put a mic on her chest.
That's right.
So
No
she was
explanation.
but she was in a non-confrontational way. She just wasn't having it.
Right.
And
Wasn't
I really
dealing with any of the nonsense.
Yeah, she wasn't dealing
Yeah.
with any nonsense. Like, I hear what you're saying, but here's a big fat problem for that, and
Right.
you have to address that. You can't wiggle out of that. And I really appreciated her boldness, again, without being hostile.
Sure.
But she was bold and just wasn't having any nonsense. And she was, I mean, it was 3 dudes up there. It was 3 men, and she was sitting among them and giving them what for. I appreciated that.
Yep. We're passing by something like super beautiful.
Oh yeah, we
everybody.
just have to look outside.
Give us a minute.
And everybody's
Oohs and ahs.
looking at me right now. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I talked with Dietrich after the talk. He was very gracious to do in English. And I also found him affable and charitable and intellectually honest. He asked me to email him so that the next time he was in Oslo, we could hang out. He was actually at Oslo's Skeptics Week back in October.
Yeah, we met him then.
Yeah, he was. That's when I first met him. He was on the panel discussion about what was it about? It was about the meaning of life from a Christian versus an atheist perspective.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him about that a little bit, and we had a great conversation afterwards. And I hope to continue the conversation later in Oslo.
Yeah. And I appreciated that in Oslo and in Bergen. I think what I appreciate about him is his openness. Is like, look, I just think we need more ideas, and we need to talk about them and take them seriously. Which I just much prefer that way of being in the world. Like, I believe that you can learn something from everybody who disagrees with you. And so I appreciate just like intellectual openness instead of closedness. It's like, well, no, you guys have bad ideas, and once we get rid of your ideas, then the world will be better.
Right. Oh yeah, that's definitely not his approach at all.
No.
I mean, he's not just a philosopher, but he's been a journalist for a very long time too, and so he's written about these issues for 20, 30 years, and he was telling me about his history and some of the books he's written, and so in practice too, he definitely has this way of going about things that is very open and very charitable, things like that. Thank you, Cam, for going ahead and explaining that event to us. Well, how about we go to a different event? How about we do the English one, which was done by our friend Daryl Duyema. Motown. I heard something you said right after this event was over. You said something like, that was like food for my brain. So what was that talk like? What was that talk about? And what was it like for you listening to that?
The title of the seminar was God the Party Pooper.
Yes.
Which did spark some interest and conversations when we were having our waffle stand. That's the first one that people were like, what?
Yeah.
About,
He was arguing that God is the party pooper.
Yeah.
And said, no, definitely not. Yeah.
But it was essentially about human freedom. And it was really interesting. There's so much I can say about that.
Right. But there was this kind of like concept he was trying to tackle, which is that some people think that belief in God or belief in Christianity is all just about following the right rules.
Yeah. And there's the argument that, free will doesn't exist and that we're, robots?
Oh, yeah, without
essentially
God.
robots, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're fine. I was just wondering what that event meant to you, just being there and hearing those things. Because remember, there's several, especially some of the things that he was saying about what you just said. Like, if God doesn't exist, there is no such thing as freedom. We led into maybe some of the more philosophically minded listening to this would be familiar with the words determinism versus free will. So if we're all just if all we are just material evolved, with a common sense ancestor with apes, then there's nothing immaterial about us. There's no me, there's no soul or anything like that. All that's happening in my brain is literally the equivalent of a white ball hitting the 8 ball in pool.
Yeah.
And if that's all that's going on in my brain,
Yeah.
none of my decisions are rational, none of my thoughts are free, none of my actions are free, things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that stood out to me was his explanation about freedom is required for a relationship. And it's, I thought about that, like, if I forced you to be my husband,
Yes.
like, how much love is there really, you know?
Right.
And it really emphasized just the perfect love that we have in that relationship there.
Right.
Especially being given that freedom. And yeah, Alan raised a really good question at the end of that seminar.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, so one of the first questions at the end of the seminar, because at the end of every discussion, we had opportunities for questions for the panelists or the speakers. And there was a first question, I don't remember exactly the question that was asked, but when Daryl gave his explanation, there was one thing that I thought he had missed. And it was one word specifically that in the Bible says, you gain an everlasting life with Jesus. Or eternal, one of the two. I mean the same thing.
Right,
but
exactly.
It just stuck with me. And so I asked a question for the people there, not because I don't know the answer to it, but for the people that were there in the audience.
Right.
What is the purpose of life if there is no God? And what happens if we die if there is no God? And Daryl gave the answer that I thought he would, which is but added to it, which I thought was really, really clever, is that without no God, there is no purpose to life. And the thing that he added to that really stuck with me is that the word purpose has no meaning if there is no God.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, we can think of things like scissors. Yes, they have a purpose, but the purpose of life in total is nothing. It's meaningless without no God.
Yeah.
And this answer the second question, also the same thing. Or actually, I think I asked, what do you think happens when we die if there is no God? And he said nothing. Like, there is, if in his opinion, that nothing happens to you, just return to the earth when there is no God. So yeah, I thought it was a really important question that needed to be asked. And no one was asking it, so I thought I had raised it. So everyone that was in the audience that was a non-believer had the opportunity to hear that and possibly mull it over in the future.
Yeah, that's very good. And I mean, that's a point that like really resonates with me. I actually thought about this during the last Skeptics Week, during the panel discussion about the meaning of life. And something that Diederik said in there was like, you know, what gives my life meaning is realizing there is no meaning. And I'm like, there is no objective meaning. We just kind of get to make it up ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, if there is no God, then there is no meaning. And if there is no meaning, I mean, my problem with that, and the reason why I raise it, is because nobody lives that way. People live as if their lives do have meaning. And so there was a question that came up in that Q&A that was like, well, should we want life to have a meaning? And I mean, I probably understand why that person asked that question. I didn't find the question that interesting because my point was we all live as if there is a meaning to life.
Yeah.
We live as if our actions do have consequences, as if they fulfill like happiness or and utility in our lives. So we live as if there is meaning. Might as well just try and figure out where that comes from. Yeah. That's my point. Yeah.
Probably a comedian or something. I don't remember where I heard it, but someone said, "I like living. You know, it's something to do."
Yeah.
And it's like if there's no meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
But as long as I'm conscious, I prefer pleasure to pain.
Right.
And maybe I can't even explain the source of my desires and my values and the things that I think are good or interesting, but I prefer those to the opposite. So sure, I'll return to the earth, but as long as I'm conscious, I'd like that conscious life to be pleasant or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's satisfying. I think to your point, people generally don't live that way. And even often when humanists or naturalists argue about that, they say, well, suppose and that they're making an argument about creating your own meaning, but then they give some really lofty thing, like maybe your meaning is making people's lives better, and da 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 da. Maybe your meaning is researching the cure for cancer, and maybe there's a breakthrough.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but those are still meaningless.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and William Lane Craig, of course, has a lot of good stuff to say about that. But,
Yeah.
But
Dodoyama had a lot of great things to say about that too.
he really did. He really. It was great because the talk was about freedom.
Yeah.
God the Party Pooper, and he talked about freedom being necessary for relationships. If naturalism or physicalism is true, then freedom is impossible, and therefore relationships are impossible. And then the effect of free choice on morality and whether you can live a good and moral life, and he really tied together a lot of really important themes from several branches of the big questions. Like he grabbed onto several branches of the big questions and tied them all together with the theme of freedom. And I thought it was just excellent.
Yeah, I did as well. I don't know if anybody had anything else to say about that, but I think for now that leads us to let's land it there for now. How about for this one? Yeah. Because I know that there's a ton more things that we have to say about the other two events and some of the conversations we have. So I think I'm gonna do something really mean and let our listeners just wait for next time. Wait for next time for those stories. So you're tuning in, listening. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and tune in next time for some of the stories of our conversations that we had. See you again next week. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Word First Radio. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check us out online at wordfirst.us. Yeah!
Now we're roll dogs.
Roll dogs.
Rolly D's.